I opened my eyes, reading off the results before me with shock. The test designated it as blood, but it was so much worse. Oh my god. It took a few seconds to hit me, but I still managed to make it over to the trash can before puking my guts out into the garbage. The freshly downed alcohol burned its way back up like hellfire, making me wince and choke. Sho snatched away the paper before it could float to the ground, left behind while I was dealing with my own existential dread. I could see his face turn pale as the same results were read off. Human, he whispered, scanning the paper again and again to see if he was imagining it, desperately hoping that the results would change before his eyes. The hell does this mean, Teller? I couldn't even speak, just shaking my head as another heave of anxiety worked from my gut upward. It hit me then that we had another sample, the small glowing organic material that Sandra took. I grabbed the tube from within the box, emptying it onto a slide to inspect it now. The spore was small, still giving off a faint blue light even out of the natural environment, but no bigger than the smallest grain of sand. Another slide was quickly pressed atop it, moving right under the scope to reveal whatever horrors we may have been down there with. It wriggled under the pressure of the slide, trying desperately to escape. As I looked through, small pincers became visible on one end of it, with hundreds of small legs branching off in every direction, scurrying. Stressed beyond its limits, trying to get out of the new environment. It's alive, I muttered, moving over so Sho could take a look. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's a living, biological organism. Oh my god, he whispered in return. Sandra sat in the corner, still out of it, but now grabbing at her skin, complaining of an itch. Sho was trying to cry through bloodshot eyes, looking at me as he moved his eyes from the microscope. We found life on Mars. Great, fucking great, I muttered, taking another drink and feeling it burn down into my empty belly. My mind was racing, not sure of if I would ever make it off this godforsaken desert planet. Sho continued staring through the microscope now, studying the creature before a thought came to him. As he grabbed a dropper and the remaining blood samples opening the slide, I almost stopped him. It occurred to me that we're about to do something bad, that we've discovered something that could inevitably kill us all. Yet I couldn't stop him because of my own curiosity and apathy surrounding my current situation. Look, Sho told me, gesturing me closer to the microscope now. The thing inside the slide was absorbing the entire sample of blood Sho had just set on the slide, growing as it did. The blue glow pulsed as it absorbed more of the life force nearby, greedily sucking it all up as it grew like a damned tick. It won't stop, Sandra muttered, grabbing at her skin, pulling on it like she was trying to get something off of her. I noticed scratches beginning to show as her nails dug deeper into her arm. The itching, it won't go away. I'm so itchy it hurts. What? I asked, moving over to her. What's itching? Everything. She shuddered again, a cold sweat shining on her forehead. I could see her growing pale, eyes bloodshot like Sho's. He was looking at me in fear, an understanding forming in his eyes as Sandra clawed at her skin more furiously. Everything crawling. Ah! She screamed as her nails finally tore through her skin, unleashing a small trickle of blood that began down her arms. Moving, the blood was moving, pulsating down. As it dripped to the floor under her, it began to scatter before disappearing, the luminous blue color pulsating, reflecting off the crimson blood like some fucked up police lights. Oh shit, Sho said, grabbing the nearest sterile tray he could find and starting to beat at the micro-terrors skittering around the ground. It almost reminded me of that mummy movie, all the scarabs bursting from skin. I shivered, fighting to keep my composure. These things were more like roaches, surviving the hardest hits from the tray as Sho fell to his knees, desperately smashing the tray into the ground to no avail as these things simply absorbed more blood, scrambling for every drop that fell from Sandra, bringing newcomers to the feast along with it. Sandra grew more pale, eventually beginning to shrivel from the blood loss, thousands of the things swarming around, feeding on her from the inside out. I was brought out of my stupor by Sho shouting once more, "Teller! Help!" I don't know what I was thinking, but I grabbed the bottle of whiskey off the table, took a lighter we used for some old Bunsen burners nearby, and getting ready. I heaved the full bottle back, getting ready to smash it toward the tile floor with all my might. Move. He pulled away just in time, leaving the bloody tray rattling on the floor. The bottle hit the ground, exploding into glass and whiskey all over. I hit the lighter, getting ready to toss it right after, but before I could, something began to happen. Blue lights across the floor began to sputter out, the organisms stopping where they were and convulsing as the alcohol touched them. Everything that was touched by the spirits began to seize, staying where they were on the ground, and thrashing in agony as they died. I could hear a small guttural scream echoing out in chorus as they died, hundreds going silent one after the other. The occasional one would still crawl from one of Sandra's wounds, falling to the ground into the drink before writhing in agony like those before it, dying on the floor. "She's dead," Sho whispered, looking at Sandra's drained corpse. They killed her." "Sho, I need your blood," I said, already grabbing a scalpel and holding it up to one of my fingers. "God, please." I hesitated before making the incision, praying to whatever gods on Earth or Mars that I wouldn't have those things in me. Please. The razor-sharp blade didn't even hurt with all the adrenaline running through my veins. I grabbed a fresh slide, squeezing a drop out onto it. I closed my eyes as the other slide was put on top, loading it under the microscope and praying one more small plea before looking down. Oh, thank fuck. I breathed a sigh of relief, seeing no traces of the small creatures, just healthy swimming red and white cells. Clean blood. Sho, come on, we need to be sure. I know, I'm ahead of you," he said, grabbing a new scalpel and slide to take his own sample. The incision was made, his eyes closing with prayer like mine did just moments ago. We knew before we could get it under a microscope, before we could even get the slide on top. This blood was pulsating, a blue glow from millions of tiny dots almost made it look like there was glitter scattered into the crimson, mixing into a deep purple. He became more pale. "I'm going to be sick." "Don't go on my yet," I said, grabbing a bottle of isopropyl alcohol from a nearby cabinet. One drop on the slide and I put a top on it, sliding it under the scope to watch and see if my theory had any kind of hope. It worked. The spindly glowing creatures were thrashing around on the slide, blue glow sputtering as they seized up just like the ones from Sandra. The blood was left alone, preserved by the alcohol, for now as the creatures died off in huge numbers. My belief is fucking vindicated. There might be a way out of this, after all. If I'm right, I might be able to save Shoto before he gets drained like Sandra. The phone in the corner of the room began to beep, a signal coming in from wherever they were keeping an eye on us at. Running over, I was out of breath before they could even get a word out, making my demands as fast as possible. Strongest drinkable alcohol we have. I need it, higher proof, the better. Now! I was almost yelling into the receiver, swear I could hear the guy on the other line retreating from the damn phone. All he gave me was a yes sir before Pratt came on the line, voice gruff. "The hell happened in there?" he asked, anger in his voice. "Sandra's dead. Sho might be too, if you don't get me those drinks fast enough. You might want to have a few yourself, just in case," I mentioned, pulling back for a moment and waiting for his answer, expecting him to offer some rebuttal to what was happening now. "Okay, do what you need to," he mumbled. Something was off, something about how he was responding to the situation. He was too calm. "Sir, you assigned this research point, right?" I asked, gauging my words carefully. "That's not a question for right now." He shot back, hanging up the line. "That bastard knows something," I muttered, turning back to Shoto and seeing him begin to shake. Just in time, I heard the transfer drawer slam, 2 big glass bottles being shoved through in a bin. 1 whiskey like before, and 1 bottle of holy shit Everclear. No idea why anyone brought that up here when there were always better things, but who am I to judge? I uncapped it, shoving it to Sho. "Drink, don't know how much, but just get drinking." "You sure about this?" he asked, grabbing the bottle and taking a huge gulp. His face contorted in disgust as the burn descended through his throat, down into his stomach. Assuming he was on an empty stomach, I know mine had been growling, so it was likely. The alcohol should absorb quickly into his blood, giving us a much more favorable time limit than Sandra had. No, but what choice do you have? I shrugged, uncapping my own bottle and taking a hard gulp. He shrugged, the very act looking like it was uncomfortable for him. I could tell he was starting to hurt, getting that same feeling Sandra must have had before the itching started. The microorganisms must not be big enough yet to cause that, but I'm sure they were feasting on the blood in his veins as we sat, now passing the bottle of whiskey back and forth, a much more palatable alternative to the Everclear. I kept an eye from him to the digital clock on the wall, every minute passing by in agony. These things died on almost immediate contact, so it was just a matter of letting the alcohol get into his bloodstream and spread through his body. After 20 minutes, we both were feeling nervous, but the time came. Take 2. Guess so, Sho replied, holding out his hand to me. The scalpel went through his finger, dropping onto the slide I was holding. It wasn't moving, no pulsating, just still blood. He sighed in relief, but to be sure we loaded it into the microscope. The microorganisms were still in there, but completely still, no glow coming from them anymore. It worked. Sho let out a sigh, holding up the bottle of Everclear and giving a toast. Cheers to not being drained from the inside, I guess. We have other problems now, I said, raising my bottle and drinking again alongside him. God, I need food though. I went to the phone, ringing out to security to request something be brought in. There was no answer, only silence met me on the other line. Sons of bitches, Sho said, moving to the window and beginning to bang a fist against it. Hey, let us out. They're not going to, I mumbled, looking around at our options. There was that same feeling gnawing at me, knowing something obviously wasn't right. Pratt knew something about that area, but whatever it was, he wasn't telling us. I sat down in a nearby chair, leaning it back and looking at the ceiling, struggling to come up with an answer to what we could do. We could break the window, Sho offered, a fist still balled up against the glass in front of him. He looked woozy, not holding his liquor very well. Couldn't blame him either. Drinking on an empty stomach isn't too pleasant. I was only moving around fine because I was so used to it, but he was having a struggle going on in his body. Can't imagine he was feeling great after the blood loss either. Barely bleeding yet being mostly drained must be one hell of a sensation. I don't know, man. I don't know what the hell we should do about all this. Whatever that is too dangerous to just stay here. I don't think Pratt has good intentions for it either, I said, looking straight into the camera in the ceiling corner. Do you bastard? How did that get there, though? He said, whispering in a shaky voice. I could only shake my head and shrug. Above my pay grade, I mumbled, finally getting up after a moment, grabbing one of the metal material carts nearby and pulling up on the handle to test its weight. Should be all right. Think you can distract them for a while? I'm going with you, he said, trying to stand himself, but stumbling instead. No, you're not. I need to move fast, I said, crouching to get a good grip on the cart, lifting with my entire back into it. You need to send a message back home about this. They don't need to send anyone up here. You serious? He asked, sitting back on the counter now, looking more faint. Adrenaline was probably wearing off for him, with no telling how much longer he would stay conscious. You saw how quickly that killed her, right? She's just your baseline. That stuff thrives on blood, and if it gets back home, what was all this for? Terraforming fucking Mars just to bring death back to a dying Earth. Useless, I began ranting, yelling as I stepped toward the observation window. No going back now, I heaved one more time, tossing the cart with all my strength. The glass shattered, scattering the floor outside in the hall. I draped a fire blanket over the edge, scraping broken glass off before I climbed over. Toss me the ISO over there, I shouted back to Sho, who began to grab the alcohol from the cabinet nearby. The hell are you going to do? He asked, tossing one bottle at a time over the broken windowsill to me. We didn't see how far that cavern went back. I'm going to see if I can find a source, I mentioned, pointing to a bag that was left over one of the lab chairs, which Sho promptly tossed over. Loading the bottles in, I started off, moving back towards the cafeteria. Stay safe, I'm going to take care of things. Be careful, he shouted after me. Unlock the door too. Flipping the lock as I passed by, Sho slipped out and started going the opposite way, though where I have no idea. It took about 10 minutes for me to make it into the caf, blowing past the poor cook on duty, taking every bit of alcohol I could, piling it into the bag, then beelining for the garage. I quickly found out where Sho had been, finding him struggling for breath, leaning against the wall leading into the locker room nearby. Suits in the RV. I told them to open the door as soon as you're in to let you out of the garage. I raided the other labs for ISO too, so there's more in there. It's just kind of thrown in though, that's all the energy I had. He was barely able to get the words out through labored breaths. Rest, I'll try to come back. Thank you, I said, patting him on the back before running through the door, scrambling into the still dusty RV we made the original journey in. That thing went faster than I had ever taken it, blasting through Martian deserts, with no regard to the rocky terrain underneath. It was a much faster journey than the first time, and as I approached the formation popping up in the distance, I started mentally preparing my list. I was going to attempt taking the buggy down the entire way, crossing the path between seas on it as far as I could go. There had to be something at the end, somewhere back there. Some way to stop these things from ever making it out of here. I loaded everything into the buggy before even deploying it, hardly letting the RV come to a stop before opening the bay doors. The entire back seat was filled with enough alcohol to make a college frat house sick, so hopefully it would stand up to whatever this was. It didn't seem to take much to kill them, but my fingers are crossed regardless. The buggy was out in seconds, rumbling down the path into the cave. I didn't even care about my own safety at this point, just hitting the pedal to the floor and hoping for the best. When the blue light began to glow from beyond my headlights, I finally started tapping the brakes a little. The cavern opened before me, lumescent blue in the great dark maw above making entire star systems. God, it would be beautiful if I didn't know what the hell it was. Vibrant blue fell from up high, dropping into the blood sea like snow over the ocean, pulsing brighter as it settled into the warm life force below. I pressed on, turning on the brights on the buggy and carefully making my way onto the jagged rock path in between. The blood that was overtaking it made waves as my wheels passed through, making the blue twinkle as it was tossed up in my wake, responding to the stimulus. I heard a loud scream echoing off the cave walls yet miles away. Something knew I was there. The brights of the buggy didn't cut through the darkness as well as I had hoped, but I pressed on still, always keeping an eye on the path ahead. Eventually I could see that the cavern was narrowing again. The seas on either side were beginning to reflect off smooth walls, maybe 2 or 3 kilos into the cave, judging by the meter on my dash. My path stayed consistent though, a split in the Red Sea bringing me ever closer to what lay beyond. High above, the same pulsing kept going, though began to slope inward towards something in front. At some point it looked like a tunnel of stars in some amusement park ride, except with the metallic scent of blood punctuating every part of my surroundings. There, up ahead, the light continued to pulse but much brighter, like a concentration of whatever was causing it. My brights began to reflect off the smooth cave walls around me, the seas narrowing further as the path met the wall, leaving only small trenches on either side of me leading back to the sea. It almost looked to be flowing this way, but I couldn't tell well enough with the light provided. Until I hit the full force of the glow, finding the end of the cavern abruptly. Whatever it was, it almost looked human. At least, at one time it did. Centuries or eons ago, I have no idea, but this thing looked like a bastardized giant, a face with eyes only, millions of them covering the top half of it. These eyes were the source of the blue pulse, ringing through the entire cavern like a beacon to the others. I could see massive versions of the damned things. These parasites crawling to and from near the base of the giant, exactly where the rivers of blood stemmed from. They were tearing at it, sucking greedily from the rivers as they tore at the thing, trying to empty more blood into their pit outside. The thing's mouth was open in a twisted scream, creatures crawling in and out with seemingly no purpose but to reproduce inside and out. Once they had drank their fill of the sustenance flowing from the giant, they climbed back to the cavern ceiling. These were the glowing stars that were hanging above us the whole time, dropping their growing offspring down into the seas to grow strong. One caught sight of me in the bright lights of the buggy, letting out a guttural shriek and running toward me. Hundreds of skittering legs holding up a slender body, blue light glowing brighter as it sensed fresh prey. I grabbed one of the bottles of ESO nearby, undoing the cap and splashing it when the thing came near. It fell back, screaming loud and alerting the others nearby as steam sizzled off its skin, hundreds of huge eyes glaring at me with hatred and hunger. My presence was known now, with nothing left to lose. I started uncapping bottles, emptying them into the rivers flowing from the giant, bright blue specks floating like little islands on the surface. The plastic bottles of ISO were all emptied when the screaming from others started, blue pulsating against the flowing red underfoot and pale flesh of the dead god in front of me. The things began moving forward, lights all combining into one dazzling show as they scurried toward me, fear shining in their eyes for what I was doing. I kept one of the ISO bottles to cover my way out, but not before pulling the lighter I had loaded into the suit pocket, flicking it right into the very flammable alcohol that was now floating around on top of the blood in front of me. They screamed louder as the flames roared high, giving me my first real look at them in full light. These things were extra ugly, the bright light serving only to bring prey into them. Underneath, millions of dark eyes were staring me down, hatred filling them as I burned their potential young before their eyes. I didn't care. I saw what they could do. This wasn't natural. This wasn't good. This was just pure evil, made to devour and reproduce. The flames grew high in front of me as I threw one of the drink bottles further, letting the flames mix and spread. There was enough room for me to three-point turn the buggy while they were still struggling against the flames, and I stepped on the pedal once more, opening bottle caps as I went back the way I came. Each bottle was emptied into the seas alongside me as I drove. A couple of drink taken by me in the process, just to fight off whatever nerves were still cutting through my adrenaline. As bottles were emptied on the way back, I could hear loud splashes far off in the distance, huge stars dropping from above to leave massive impacts in the sea, buffeting the buggy and threatening to throw me over the side every which way. I was struggling just to stay on the path, even more when I could see the larger blue glows skittering toward me, the surface tension of the seas letting them walk like it was nothing. I don't know how I got out, but I just kept emptying bottles until they were all gone. When I finally hit the entrance, hitting the incline to go back up, I stopped to throw one last bottle of rum at the wall, seeing it smash as it hit the smooth, carved etchings in the wall. Striking a flare, I sent it sailing toward the broken glass, igniting the alcohol. To my surprise, the fire began to spread through the carving, ascending the wall with fervor and lighting up the entire surface with no discernible pattern in the flames, eventually overtaking the cavern ceiling above. Screams echoed from every direction in the cave as the creatures hit a fervor, the path of flames I had left floating on now frothing seas of blood behind me. There was no way in hell I was sticking around to see what the flames did, screams chasing me all the way up as I almost put the pedal through the damned floor. I made it out into the harsh Martian sun, almost blinded from the total darkness down below. I don't know if Shaw was able to get the message out. Hell, I don't even know if the alcohol is going to be an actual answer to the issue, or just a band-aid to keep them at bay. I'm typing everything up now in the RV though, trying to send a message out back home to tell people. I know there was nothing I could do if they got out, and I know it would be the end if they got back to Earth. There's probably going to be some kind of inquisition when I get back to base. Probably going to get arrested. Hell, Considering how shady Pratt was acting, I don't doubt they were after this thing to utilize as a weapon or something. What's to come is a mystery, but for now I'm going to just keep moving forward. There's no telling if I'll ever make it back to Earth alive, but I'll do my best to keep it safe from here. From these damned things, God, I need a drink. Thank you for listening till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Let me know in the comments what scares you the most. Until next time, and be careful in the dark.